My name's Jacob Samario, and I own a commercial recording studio called English Oak Recording that I started back in 2018. And first, I want to talk about the biggest myth of gainstaging, that you don't need to gainstage unless you're mixing completely analog, that gainstaging doesn't matter when you're mixing in a DAW. And I understand where that sentiment comes from. Back in the day when you were mixing completely analog, if your signals were too loud, you would start to get distortion, and if they were too quiet, you'd start to introduce noise into your signal. And so with every myth, there may be a little bit of truth. We don't need to worry about that in our DAWs, so it kind of feels like gainstaging isn't important. But let me tell you why. All of the classic hardware back in the day was designed to sound its best at a certain sweet spot. And a lot of our modern plugins are modeled based off of the analog gear that we all dream about. And if we aren't gainstaging, we aren't fully leveraging the best quality sound we can get out of our plugins. So let me show you a few ways that you can identify the sweet spot when you're mixing. Let's start by getting familiar with this mix, and then I'll show you a few ways that we can identify that we're hitting that sweet spot in our mixes.
When I look into your eyes, I see the ocean blue, the greatest escape I could walk into, and it burns so blue. Yeah, it burns so blue.
The first most important place that you can gainstage your mix is on the individual tracks. The vocals in this song are a really great example, so let's take a look at them. We're going to start by bypassing all of the plugins so you can see what the level of the vocals was when I started the mix. And what I want you to do is to pay attention to this meter right here. That's what's going to tell us if we're hitting the sweet spot.
When I look into your eyes, I see the ocean blue, the greatest escape I could walk into, and it burns so blue. Yeah, it burns so blue.
And so you may have noticed that the meter starts at this dark green color and then breaks into light green around here. Let's take a look at that one more time.
When I look into your eyes, I see the ocean blue, the greatest escape I could walk into, and it burns so blue. Yeah, it burns so blue.
And it's when that meter breaks into the light green that we know that we're hitting the sweet spot of our mix. And in this case, when I recorded these vocals, I chose to gainstage my recording properly going into Pro Tools hitting that sweet spot. So when you think about gainstaging, you can choose to do it up front when you're working with the artist or creating the song, but equally if you're someone who is mixing a song for somebody else or a song you already made before you watched this video, you can also clip gain the individual clips to make sure that they're hitting that sweet spot. And hitting that sweet spot is important because, again, this is all happening before all of our plugins. We want to give them the opportunity to perform the best they can when we're using them to make the song sound the best that it can. And so what if you don't use Pro Tools? Here is a universal way that you can check to make sure you're hitting the sweet spot. I'm going to put a VU meter here on the vocal, and let's see how the VU meter responds.
When I look into your eyes, I see the ocean blue, the greatest escape I could walk into, and it burns so blue. Yeah, it burns so blue.
And so you'll notice that the vocal was hovering around 0 on the VU meter. Sometimes it was below, sometimes it was above, but that average level that we're aiming for is 0 VU. Now, if you're unsure about the metering in your DAW and you want to use this same plugin, this is a VU meter from Waves. It's super simple and effective. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. And if you were to download this plugin, a portion of the purchase would go back to supporting the studio at no additional cost to you. But that being said, you're welcome to use whatever VU meter plugin you want. There's also a free one here from TB Pro Audio. It's not my favorite one, but it is free and it has some cool different looks to it, so it might be something that you're into. And another important note that I want to make is that the VU meter originated in the days of analog recording. So we actually have a modern digital equivalent of measurement that is equal to 0 on a VU meter. And that's -18 decibels full scale. Now, don't get stressed out about the numbers. There's no need to make this more complicated, but that is an important note to make, and let me tell you why. You'll notice here on Pro Tools that around -20 is where it breaks into that sweet spot. Let's take a look one more time.
When I look into your eyes, I see the ocean blue.
So you can see around -18 decibels full scale is where that sweet spot is in the digital realm. And so why do I bring all this up? Well, the next most important place that you can gain stage your mix is on the mix bus. Many of the best mixing engineers have a method for gain staging their mix at the mix bus. And again, this all originated in the days where you were mixing on an analog console. And when you would start your mix, you would be looking at these meters. Again, because if your mix was too loud, it was going to distort, and if it was too quiet, there would be too much noise introduced into your signal. And so an important note that I want to make is that 0 on the VU meter is something that we calibrate for. The default setting that you're going to find for a lot of digital VU meters is that -18 decibels full scale. On my mix bus specifically, I like to use the ATR 102, both for its characteristics, but also as a way to meter or gain stage my mix. This was a trick I got from my friend Will Beasley. I'll drop his Instagram in the description of this video. And he mentioned that when he gain stages his mix, he would do it into the ATR 102 with the drums around -3 on the VU meter, same with the bass, and when those sum together, it would be at 0 on the ATR 102. An important note I want to make is that the ATR 102 takes quite a bit of energy to hit 0 on the VU meter. It's not calibrated to -18 decibels full scale. It's closer to something like -12 decibels full scale. So you may see other mixing engineers talking about what they're aiming for on their VU meter, and I think what's important to know is what the meter is calibrated to, because you may be aiming for completely different levels if you didn't know what the meter is calibrated for. So let's take a look at where the drums are sitting. We're hovering just around -3 on the VU meter, which is where we want to be. And let's check out the bass. Again, right around -3, sometimes going quite a bit over, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. These aren't hard set rules. This is just a method that I follow to help me deliver consistent mixes. And so when we sum these together, we end up hitting 0 on the VU meter. And when we start our mixes this way, we know that we have a good solid foundation, that the mix is starting at a healthy level. And why we start with the drums and the bass is because they take up the most energy of the mix. But now that we've got our foundation set, we know that anything else we do to the mix is going to work out and be good. And so that's why I believe that gain staging is so incredibly important. When we gain stage properly, both at the track level and at our mix bus, we're getting the most out of our plugins. We also start delivering mixes at a healthy level, which means that we're gonna learn how to become better audio engineers or mixing engineers in the process. You have to be able to record something really well in order to gain stage it well and ultimately create a great mix. Gain staging encourages you to become better at your craft in more ways than one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.